Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It is a pleasure to speak in the debate today and to be speaking with the Minister in his place as well. I want to start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Cardiff West on his campaign and his very effective speech today, which highlighted also his deep expertise in this issue. And I think it's important that we also pay tribute to his talent through his solo work, but also the band MP4, of which there are members here today, which has brought much entertainment in this House and indeed outside. And it is great to see the talent of members of Parliament on display in different ways and connecting with the challenges as well that many across our constituencies also face. We have heard some really excellent contributions on both sides of the House, and I will draw on and build on some of the comments that have been made by the Honourable and Right Honourable Members for Sunderland Central, Watford, Perth and North Perthshire, Malden and Tatton, which I think have really illustrated how there are many complexities to the debate, but I think a kind of common thread in which the House is recognising the depth of the issues that we're speaking about. And I think the question then is how we move forward, not whether we move forward. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the UK has a special and unique place in the history of popular music. The music industry our music industry is globally renowned and is an important part of our cultural offering to the world. And to support the industry, from new artists to our global artists, we must ensure that they are part of a fair system, that they have equal bargaining power to enable them to flourish and to make sure that we do what we've been talking about, which is support a new generation of British talent to come forward to create more new music. Now, British music has taken its inspiration from jazz, from blues, from gospel, from rock and rap, from Asia, Africa, Latin America, the USA, all around the world. But then it's also given it a distinctly British twist and given back a new types of music to the rest of the world. The Beatles, the Kinks, Oasis, Blur, Adele, these acts and many, many more provide the soundtrack to our lives and the defining songs of our popular culture. And indeed, music has benefited from immigration into the UK, whether that's from ska to Afrobeats to Bhangra. And of course, down the decades, the music industry has contributed billions to the exchequer, both in domestic sales and in exports. And yet the industry has a dark side, a history of exploitation of artists and of ripping off the musical talents on which the whole industry's success relies. Now, the 1960s gave us some of the greatest bands, but also some of the sharp managers who invented new ways to rip off talented and often working-class youngsters. Bands such as the Small Faces, powering the swinging 60s, never saw the money that they had earned. The recoupment deal was born when artists were working to pay the music companies and not the other way round. And of course, musicians, often young and ambitious, very quickly could have signed away their futures for the sake of a record deal. It is a form of exploitation, it is about imbalances in power, and it is unfair. Now, I want to pay tribute as well to Tom Gray and the Broken Record campaign. Tom is a talented musician and composer and a worthy recipient as well of the Mercury Music Prize with the band Gomez. He has deployed his organisational and persuasive skills to help highlight the issue of performers' rights and remuneration. Tom, as well as the Musicians' Union, Ivors Academy and others, have worked so hard and worked with honourable members and the Honourable Member for Cardiff West to highlight the broken music market. Now, Labour supports the second reading of this bill, which aims to address the unfair system of remuneration for musicians and for their work from streaming platforms. The campaign that is the backdrop to the bill also saw in April over 150 musicians, artists and songwriters write to the Prime Minister to fix streaming and to put the value of music back where it belongs, in the hands of music makers. Now, the bill aims to do this by placing the treatment of revenues gained from music streaming services onto a common footing with the treatment of revenues gained from other sources, such as physical sales of music. And Mr Deputy Speaker, we know that musicians' livelihoods, as has been raised by honourable members, has also been shattered over the last 18 months, with that inability to perform live at gigs, concerts, festivals, shows, or even in the recording studio. And we've also seen the disappearing of licensing income for artists as pubs, clubs, restaurants, hairdressers, etc. have been forced to close. There's also been real destitution for session musicians, stagehands, and the many trades associated with the music industry. Now, the Musicians' Union is also right to say that the last 18 months has also highlighted the importance of streaming as a way of musicians being able to earn a living. And streaming, as the Honourable Member for Cardiff West also highlighted, has created huge opportunities for musicians. But let's be clear that fair income for musicians was a deep problem before the pandemic. It is a classic example as well of technology outstripping our legal framework and of how technology can be working to profit a few and to exploit the many. And it is the duty of this House to modernise the law so that it reflects the reality of the music industry and challenges the status quo whereby most streaming income ends up in the pockets of record labels, streaming platforms and digital giants. An estimated 55% of proceeds compared to that 15% going to artists and publishers. And compounded also by the imbalance that the Right Honourable Member for Tatton highlighted in the speed of payments as well. Now, the bill is intended to give effect to certain recommendations by the House of Commons Digital, Culture, Media and Sports Committee in their July report on the economics of music streaming. And I want to also pay tribute to the DCMS Select Committee for their forensic work on this issue. Now, this bill seeks to update the law of performer, composer and songwriter rights to reflect the changing landscape. And the Honourable Member for Cardiff West laid out a very clear case as to why this is needed. Now, where an original music work is created or lyrics accompanying music are created, the composer or composers of those works have rights under the 1988 Act to control exploitation of those works. Composers and performers may transfer the administration of those rights to collecting societies, which address the exploitation of members' works on a collective basis, charging those using works for such use. Composers and performers may transfer their rights to receive revenue from the exercise of making available rights to third parties, such as record companies, publishing companies and the like. Their entitlement to receive a share of that revenue is determined contractually. With consumption patterns having changed, music streaming now accounts for the predominant part of the music industry in the UK's revenue. However, it is suggested that around 8 out of 10 performers earn less than £200 a year from music streaming. Now, performers have a right to authorise and control the making available of a work on which they have performed to the public, for example, via radio or television, or by music streaming. But in relation to radio, television and other channels, forms of making available, performers are entitled to an equitable remuneration. However, in respect of music streaming, they are not, due to the exception set out in the 1988 Act. The predominant part of income, therefore, typically remains with the person or persons to whom the performer has transferred their rights. Now, composers and performers also do not have a general right to receive information on how their music is being used, the revenue that it is generating from persons other than collecting societies. Further, it is often the case that composers and performers enter into contract arrangements for their work to be exploited at a very early stage in their careers, often without the benefit of legal or other advice. Such arrangements can then be for the long term and result in the transfer of rights as well to those seeking exploitation. So the bill seeks to address these inequalities in bargaining power and rights. Now, Labour recognises that music streaming saved the recorded music industry over a decade ago when piracy threatened the fundamental basis of copyright. And these are issues also alluded to by the Right Honourable Member for Malden. And as with other areas of technology, the streaming market has little or no competition, which has allowed oligopolistic behaviour from platforms like Spotify. The DCMS Select Committee inquiry exposed the inequity at the heart of the new global market in music streaming. And we support the bill at this second reading, but we know that the chance of it leading to meaningful change is slim unless the government gives it parliamentary time. And I do believe the Minister is listening and look forward to what he says today about how we will be able to move forward. We also attach great value to the CMA market inquiry, which again has been alluded to by right honourable members today. The inquiry into streaming. And we look forward to reading the report when it's published next year. And I would also echo calls from the Right Honourable Member for Tatton for an update today from the Minister about when we may expect some of those findings. Mr Deputy Speaker, the bill's proposals are an important step forward in this debate. There is cross-party support for change, as the Select Committee report also showed. The government has promised to act, but I do worry that the response to the DCMS report, committee report, did not go far enough. It concluded that the issues were complex and needed to be better understood. Indeed, this is the case in reflection and conversations I've had with Sony Music and others. And the government did rightly commit to assessing different models, such as equitable remuneration, to explore how they might affect different parts of the music industry. We need a way in which we address the unfairness and without causing any unintended consequences, which is why further inquiry and why this bill should move to committee is, in my view, the right way forward. The government also did propose to explore the issues through engagement with the Music Industry Contact Group and to update on progress. Mr Deputy Speaker, we do need to move forward. And as has been highlighted, a report in November showing that Lucien Grange, CEO and Chair of Universal Music Group, earned more this year than composers and lyricists earned in 2019 in total from streaming, downloads and sales in the UK. It's brought the issue again into sharp relief. And I don't agree, as he won't be surprised, with all that the Right Honourable Member for Malden said on this. There is a fundamental issue of inequity in the way the system works, and that is at the heart of what we are addressing today. The status quo cannot continue, and we indeed want Britain to be the best place in the world to be a musician and to work in the music industry. It should be a trailblazer for how the rest of the world can be. The issues in this bill seeking to address and fix streaming are vital in order to see the reforms to copyright law that will create a fairer system for musicians and for new talent to know that they will be rewarded fairly. So we firmly support this bill having a second reading, and I hope, given the consensus across this House that action is needed, the government will be supporting the bill today and keep their promise to address this injustice. And otherwise, we do expect the Minister will pledge to bring forward government legislation urgently. Let this be a day, Mr Deputy Speaker, when the House sings from the same song sheet and backs our musicians through a commitment to reform the music industry to leave it fit for purpose for the future. Thank you.